I always like having Mike Pereira on the show from Fox Sports. He covers the NFL officiating for them and is one of their rules experts, longtime official, head of officials. We just learn about the game, the rules, and we get to kind of air our grievances as if like he's going to fix it all for us. So always fun, and what better time than Super Bowl week to check in with Mike. You're on in D.C. with Grant and Danny. How are you?
Well, I'm great, and I learned from you guys because I'm telling you right now, I'm going to have a ribeye and frites tonight in Manhattan Beach, baby, and it's going to be a beautiful thick steak, and I'm going to enjoy my frites. Thank you for putting that thought in my head. I'm great.
The least we could do. So you're having a ribeye, which makes it better because generally you're not steak and frites is not a ribeye. So I like that you're classing it up with the ribeye, the best cut of meat. But wouldn't you rather have that with some mashed potatoes?
No, absolutely not. I hated mashed potatoes when I was 7 years old, when it was forced down me. I don't like mashed potatoes. I want crispy frites, crispy French fries to go with my steak.
Because you get the salt as a nice little palate cleanse right back to the steak. Sometimes it's together in one bite. It's your own amusement park ride, Mike. I love that.
Beautiful.
Mike, there's a lot of ground to cover with you. I actually want to start with the ref news of the week as far as officiating goes. The NFL is going to look into and consider the possibility of being able to throw flags upon review on what are like injury-related type plays. So we're talking any kind of roughing of the passer, horse collar type stuff. Your thoughts on what would be unprecedented and kind of brand new if they could go back? Right now, we can review the things that were called, but this would be something that wasn't called at all that they missed, and they could buzz down to the officials and say, hey, he grabbed his face mask before the next play. Let's throw a flag.
Yeah, man, I think it's coming. I think for the first time it's going to get legitimate discussion with the competition committee. I mean, Donna Ponte said that before she left to go to the New York Giants, but, I think it's right on the edge of happening. Look, it's not like you're going to do this and nobody's done it before. I mean, this has happened now in the spring leagues where you can call, and I call them player safety fouls that, that are missed, that are actual fouls. You can add a flag. I felt that, when they got to the point where you could take off fouls for face mask or for horse collar or for hits on defensive players, I mean, most of the controversy is the ones that aren't called, and you think back about face masks, especially. So I'm all in for that as long as the people that are running the system are qualified enough and trained enough that they can actually go ahead and call the foul. So that's the question that I do have, and then. Might you expand it? If you get into the area of now calling fouls, you've got to think back to the Rams and the Saints and the missed pass interference call there. Are you going to try to go down that direction like they tried once before and failed? But they failed, to me, when they shouldn't have, because what they did was they tried to apply a different standard than, what the official actually is to call. So in other words, they said, it's got to be so clear and obvious that it's pass interference that you can add it then. But if it's close, even though it is, if it's close, then don't add it. Well, if they're going to do it again, it's got to be an either it is or it isn't. And the bang-bang plays, if they're bang-bang plays, but they are interference, then you have to add those. So, I think they'll probably do a little bit more, pay a little bit more attention to the UFL this year to see how that works. And it's not like in the UFL they have, two people that don't know anything about football, making these decisions on whether to add the fouls or not. It's actually Dean Blandino and myself. I mean, either one of us will be on all of the UFL games in the replay center making these decisions. So they could look at it. They could send somebody with us over to work with us if they want to get a feel for it. But, I said before, once they started even looking to be able to pick up flags, that was a step in the right direction to start calling fouls, as long as you can do it quick and be accurate. That's the whole thing.
That's what everybody wants, and it's been a no-brainer. All of the replay assist stuff, I think, has been a net win for sure. Mike Pereira is with us on Grant and Danny. So I was actually going to ask you what went wrong with PI challenges in the past, because I couldn't remember, and you kind of alluded to that. But was that for both flagged and unflagged, like you missed it, or did it have to be thrown? And then
No, there was one you could add also.
okay, so I'd like to go back to that immediately. I mean, are we close to that? Is that a possibility? And how do
Yeah,
they
I
get
think
it right
you
this
are.
time?
I think right now they're taking a look and getting some input from some people, from some ex-coaches and from different people that have been in the competition committee, trying to say, okay, do we need to do this? And then if we need to do this, when can we do it? Are we going to go by the standard of saying, well, we'll do it in the last 2 minutes of the first half and the last 2 minutes of the second half after the 2-minute warnings? But, is that enough? Do you need to go to the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter and maybe start at the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter and turn it over to the replay official and not have the coach challenging inside of 5 minutes? That's to me how serious it's getting right now. So I think we'll have something. Is it maybe going to be just as narrow as player safety fouls and being able to add? Look, there is some precedent, right? I mean, you can call 12 men on the field from replay. You can call an illegal forward pass for a pass thrown beyond the line of scrimmage. So there are instances where you can call things, but they were really pretty much objective situations and not really involved in judgment. And when you get into pass interference, it becomes more judgment. Face mask, no, it either is or isn't. Horse collar, it either is or isn't. It's either inside the collar or on the nameplate. But when you get into pass interference, a little bit more judgment involved in that. But I do think we'll see something.
Mike Pereira with us here on Grant and Danny. So, Mike, this will be a poorly drawn analogy, so bear with me for a second. Both Grant and I are big baseball fans. And for 100, however many years, a guy slid into second base, he beat the tag, everyone knew he was safe, right? Well, now, with the incredible camera angles and the zoom-in lens, you can see for a microsecond the shoelace was not touching the base, and the guy kept the tag down, and now we review it and the guy's out, where he's been safe for 100 years. That's kind of annoying, right? It's sort of altering something like that way. Now, when we apply that maybe to football, some of the ticky-tack things that might be the permutation of this that don't feel right, that didn't necessarily alter the play or whatever, that doesn't feel like I want that. But then the flip side is Aaron Rodgers in that Houston-Pittsburgh game got clubbed in the head. It would be a penalty almost every time. It got missed. It turns into a fumble that's returned for a touchdown. It's a game-changing moment. I want that called. How do we write in the language there where you go, only the big stuff, or can you?
Well, I mean, I think that's what this kind of committee is tasked with.
Yeah.
How do you do that? And I mean, even in the discussions, I think they talk about big plays. Now, big plays out of personal safety, that's a different thing. That's got to be a big play. Not going to mess with things like, they're going to be limited numbers. I wouldn't think you'd mess with like taunting, any of that unsportsmanlike conduct stuff. Just maybe personal fouls, and they would have to be things that do jump out at you. So it is tough. I remember way back in 1999, George Young, bless his heart, he was the head of football operations, and I went into his office. We were going to bring in instant replay, and I asked him a question, and I thought he had like a big file on instant replay. No, he had one manila folder, and written on it, he said, because he was anti-replay, he said, "The monster grows." That's what he had written on it. The monster grows. And it is. But, the monster doesn't go backwards. The monster only goes forward. And that's why you see very little backtracking when it comes to player safety or even replay. And like I say, if you can mix the technology with the right people that can make the right decisions on a consistent basis, then it's a win-win for the league. And I think that's what they're going to pursue.
So, Mike, I should have looked this up and jotted it down, but I just thought about this to ask you while we have you on as a question. Was the interception, catch, non-catch, Broncos-Bills thing at the end of that game, was that final 2 minutes, or that was overtime, I guess?
Yeah, the interception, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's clearly an interception, which is why they never stopped and looked at it. The problem is that, again, you talk about people. When you have the Aaron Rodgers play where the batted pass, where he came down with the ball and then the ball came loose and they said that he didn't have it long enough or whatever it was, and then they later admitted that they were wrong, that they should have left the call the way it was. It just is, and that's what's hard about this catch thing. But there's two types of catches. One when you're on your feet and staying on your feet, and then the other one when you're headed to the ground. And if you're headed to the ground, it doesn't make any difference if you get 2 feet down and then a knee. You have to either get an additional step or you have to make a football act, stretching the ball out. Like we saw later on in a later game, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Cooper Kupp, I think, in the play involving Seattle. But, when you go to the ground, you have to maintain control. And that ball came out right after. I mean, immediately
the next
after
day,
he hit
it was
the ground.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, right. And so that came out like immediately after he hit the ground, never hit the ground, and the defender had the ball. It was for me, it was easy. I didn't think there was any question. I didn't even think there'd be any uproar about it.
So the rule itself, Danny and I ended up arguing about this a bunch, right? I ended up, my point was, like, he still says not a catch. You just explained why it's a catch. I said it's a catch. I want to change the rule immediately. Like, I'm deferring to you and saying, great, it's a catch. We need to change what a catch is. Because I can't have a guy, when a safety is basically out of position, land on the ground and while sliding on the ground, possessing the football, have it ripped out of his arms by a guy jumping on top of him. Theoretically, in a normal situation, he'd be down by contact. I get he hasn't survived the ground yet, so he's not. But if that's not a catch, then we need to change the rule of a catch. Is kind of where I'm at on it.
I don't want to change the rule on a catch anymore. I mean, geez, we've done it forever. If you ask people now in this day and age, what's the most confusing part of football? It's the catch. Is it a catch? And then for the football people, for the officials, and for us rules analysts, I think for the most part, it's got pretty clear now. And much of the focus is on the additional step, the third step. But I think, it's difficult, but, people have to understand that, the runner, when the runner goes down and the knee hits the ground and he's been contacted, he's a runner. The play is over when the knee hits the ground or another body part other than the hand or foot. The receiver's not a runner yet. He doesn't become a runner until he absolutely completes the process of the catch. And that includes, going to the ground, maintaining control after you hit the ground. It's fairly simple, although you might say nonsensical if you want to, but I think it's about as clear as it's ever going to get in replay. I mean, this is kind of one of those things in replay. Replay really mucked it up. I mean, when you think about it, when you broke it down and, before it was very simple. You didn't have replay. As an official, they would tell us, if in doubt, call it incomplete. That's what they would say. If he gets 2 feet down and then you're in doubt as to whether he had the ball long enough, call it incomplete. And then replay came and then started dissecting it and saying, well, what is long enough? Okay, then we put language into the rules that said, well, let's see, if you have the ball long enough to turn up field and make a football move or stretch the ball out, and then they added an additional step. It's just, I think it's always something that we're going to have that's going to keep me working, I guess. That's maybe the great thing.
Yeah. Good job, security.
I know, right? They look over to you. Was that a catch? Listen, man, I don't know. Back to you guys. Mike Pereira with us here on G&D. So when it comes to the Super Bowl, this is always hard for me because you obviously want to make the correct calls. Every official does. I have no doubt of that. They're human beings with their sentient thoughts, emotions like everybody else. There's a fine line between let them play, let the players decide versus, well, you got to call that. Like, just go through that process leading up to a game that hundreds of millions of people worldwide will watch. You'd ideally like to not be noticed, but it's inevitable. The officials will have to make a major call. How do you approach it, and just kind of give me your thoughts there?
Well, I'd like to think that you approach it the same way, although, you don't often have games where it might be 160 million people or whatever watching the game. And they are never told. I promise you this, and I am honest with you guys. They're never told to let them play. But I'm just telling you, the subconscious mind takes over, and you don't want to be the story. Right. And you're a little looser, which I don't like because I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to the players. I don't think it's fair to the coaches, but you try you try not to be a part of the story. So it's more human nature, but there is going to be criticism. We just don't have games without it anymore, partly because of replay, partly because the speed of the game has gotten tougher and tougher to officiate. Hell, last night, I mean, I turned on the Pro Bowl flag football game, and I watched like the first half. They were killing the officials. I mean, this is a flag football game that no one cared about. And they had a lineman that caught a pass, and they said the quarterback was on the line. They had the play at the goal line. They missed that. But why did they shut this play down? Wait a minute. That was flag guarding. That was hand guard. That should have been. It's just the way it is. Yeah. If it happens there, it's going to happen on Sunday. And
Mike,
so you just hope.
Why can't the person in your ear just tell you what the call is? Like more often.
Can't you?
Yeah, so in other words, like all that matters is getting the call right. So I've always thought when the officials come together, someone should just be like, "Hey, I'm looking at it. He caught it or he didn't."
I think there's a bit of a slippery slope there, but I was one that talked about it's kind of what we do. It's kind of what we do in the spring league again. I call it an eighth official. I said, just like you said, okay, sometimes officials get together, and often it will happen like on a block in the back on the punt return, of which there seems to be one, or a hold every time. And they get together, and one official says, hey, you got 23 on the block in the back? I think it looked like to me it was from the side. And they end up making having a discussion and coming to a conclusion. I said, put an eighth official. Have a rotating official. Have 8 officials on the crew instead of 7, and have the 8th sit in a enclosed booth somewhere in the stadium and have the replay. Just let him look. He's not replay. He's just part of the crew. And if he can say, yeah, that was 23 block in the back, say it. Let's go. Let's move on. And but you get further, taking the game further and further off the field. I don't think that they'll ever get quite that far, but I do think, now now with the expedited review, it's somewhat the same, because they have to make that decision within 20 seconds of the play clock, the first 20 seconds. So they're quick decisions. So they're making some of these, which I think will probably take it, just like we're going into balls and strikes with robots. Probably we'll take it to a point where technology gets further and further involved.
Mike, you're the best. Always appreciate the time. Enjoy the game this weekend.
You got it. I will. Take care of you guys.
Love talking to Mike Pereira. So sharp. We'll be watching the Spring League and all of his involvement in the UFL, but of course, before that, he is on the call of all of Fox's NFL activities going into Super Sunday.